Hello friends and potential friends. Well, I'm out in the lab again today. I believe it's February 16th, 2021. But this isn't going to be just an update of what's growing in the lab because quite frankly there's not a whole lot growing in the lab right now. As you can see, I haven't started any of my spring seeds yet. So I've still got a lot of empty space in here. The main reason for that is I don't have a lot of empty space outside once the plants start getting bigger. But today I thought I'd do just kind of a overview of how this lab came to be, what it started out as, and where I've taken it to now. I hope to show that for my friends that are in the grips of winter up north right now, there's still a lot you can grow inside, and there are ways you can do it without too much expense. Got this idea because my friend Paul at the Guten Gardening channel posted a video a month or so ago showing a technical overview of his indoor grow space. And I thought I would follow along and kind of contrast some of the differences, some of the similarities. Paul, I believe, is up north in Zone 5, but I'm down here in sunny Central Florida in Zone 9B. So we have some pretty stark differences when it comes to growing, whether it's inside or outside. I think one of Paul's main concerns was trying to keep things warm enough in his grow room. And my biggest concern is trying to keep the temperatures down, while at the same time trying to keep humidity up. And it can be a challenge. So let's start off a little bit with maybe a little bit of history. When I first built this lab, many years ago, I just sectioned off the back half of my storage shed / workshop and put up a few shop lights. I still have some of those shop lights, as you can see over here, and I still use some of them from time to time. They're just standard 4-foot fluorescent shop lights, and there are a few over in the corners in this side of the room to get a little bit of side lighting from time to time. Well, the shop lights worked well. I packed them together just as tight as I could, and they served me for a number of years. Then as the technology started to change, I decided to create my own light fixtures. Basically, I took standard light sockets, lamp sockets, mounted them about 8 inches apart on a piece of plywood, put a little bit of reflective duct board underneath them to reflect the light down towards the plants, and wired it all together, and that served me well for a while. I started those off using standard incandescent bulbs. I think I was trying to use 100-watt bulbs most of the time. And they produced a lot of heat and used up a lot of electricity. As time went on, the compact fluorescents started hitting the market, so I switched all my bulbs over to compact fluorescent. And then later still, home-based LED bulbs started to hit the market, so I switched over to the LED bulbs, again using 75 or 100-watt equivalent bulbs. That did reduce the amount of heat that was generated, and it also reduced the amount of electricity that was being used. Well, this year, because of everything going on, and the fact that I haven't been getting out much, and actually haven't been spending as much money as I used to, I decided to upgrade once again. So I did a bunch of research, and I found that LED grow lights were becoming rather popular and somewhat inexpensive. After my research, I settled on the Spider Farmer brand of LED grow lights, mainly because they listed a lot of the components that they used, and the components they listed were all top quality. They cost a little bit more than some of the others you can find, but I found that they work pretty well. What you're looking at here is a Spider Farmer SF1000. I'll try not to blind you. That puts out the equivalent of about 1,000 watts of light. Now, to put that in contrast, at one time I had a 1,000-watt halogen fixture in here. It put out a lot of light, and also put out a lot of heat. And it about doubled my electric bill whenever I turned it on. I found that these LED grow lights are much more economical than that thing was. In fact, it's still out in the workshop, but it's not being used anymore. Well, after a few months using this SF1000, mostly for seed starting, I decided to expand a little bit. So I added an SF2000. That's double the light of that old halogen bulb. And I like that so well that over on the other side, I added 2 more. So now what I've got, my grow room is roughly 6 foot by 10 foot, split into 2 sections. The section over here where I do most of my seed starting and experiments is about 6 foot by about 2.5 to 3 feet. I keep these lights on timers running 18 hours a day. And on the other side, again, it's about 6 foot by 2.5 to 3 feet. And the timer on these is set to 12 hours a day. Oh, and incidentally, I put 2-inch styrofoam on the floor underneath all the plants to help insulate them from any cold coming up from underneath the shed. Now this is something you need to keep in mind if you're going to be growing things indoors, especially long term. It's the amount of light that you give your plants. These 2 pomegranates down here, I used to have over on the other side where they were getting 18 hours of light each day, and they didn't like it at all. They started dropping their leaves and looking pretty sickly. When I moved them over here to the other side where they only get 12 hours of light each day, they started putting back on all their leaves and growing pretty much profusely. They seem to be happy over here. Also moved my tomatoes over here from the other side, and they seem to have perked up quite a bit. These are tomatoes that my friend up the street brought me. Beginning of the winter, he just wanted me to keep them alive. He said there's some kind of a cherry tomato, but I'm beginning to wonder because that does not look like a cherry tomato to me. But yes, you can grow tomatoes indoors if you want to. You have to pollinate them by hand, because I don't get many pollinators in here, but it does work. So, I mentioned the difference between my conditions here and Paul's conditions up where he lives. I'm constantly fighting the heat. As a result of that, I've got an air conditioner in here. Remember, this is just a 10 foot by 6 foot room, and that air conditioner runs year round, trying to keep the heat down. And as you can see, right at the moment, it's only 77 degrees in here. Got up to 81 earlier, and overnight it went down to 64. I also battle with humidity in here. The air conditioner takes an awful lot of the water out of the air, so I have to keep trying to add it back in to keep the humidity up. Right now the humidity is at 62%, and to be honest, it's probably about above 90% outside. Remember, this is Central Florida and we have a lot of humidity. So I'm constantly battling with heat and humidity in here. Oh, and incidentally, I also have some chains hanging up here above the lights. Hanging herbs above the lights tends to be a good way to dry the herbs out. What you see there is the top of that moringa tree that I chopped off a few weeks ago. It's nice and dry now, and it's ready to be brought into the house and turned into powder. Now, I keep talking about the heat because that's my #1 nemesis in here. When I had that 1,000-watt halogen fixture in here, I had to put in some extra ducting to manage the heat. What you're looking at there is a 2-foot-tall carbon filter, which obviously needs to be cleaned, with 6-inch ducting going through a variable high-speed exhaust fan. Originally, the ducting used to go through the halogen fixture to drive the heat out of it, but now, since I'm not using that fixture, I've got it rerouted so that it goes out to vent and out to the outside. Had some other ducting in here also for trying to pull the heat off, and there's actually a little fan inside that box you see. But that was necessary when I had that halogen fixture in here, and I found it still pretty useful for sucking the hot air out of the top of this room and directing it outside. Another interesting feature of these Spider Farmer lights is that they can actually be daisy chained together and operated from a single control to dim them or bring them all the way up. Now, I personally just keep them on high intensity and I don't have them daisy chained together. But it's nice to know that you have that capability if you need it. And like most other grow lights, they all seem to be using the same type of hanging system that makes it real easy to raise and lower the lights whenever you need to. I think every LED grow light I've looked at uses the same setup. And it does work. So I'm happy with it. As far as the plants, not much going in here right now. I've got a dozen datel peppers that my buddy down the street brought to me a month or two ago. Still have my 10-year-old basil in here and a couple of cuttings back in the back. Here's the latest pineapple that I ate, and that's due to go in the ground too. If you followed my previous updates in here, you can see that that thing is recovering nicely. It was in pretty sad shape when I brought it home from the store. Got a couple of Jimmy Nardello peppers back in the corner, and each one has a couple of peppers on them. Again, I've had to be pollinating those things by hand. And then I've got 3 moringa cuttings back here that I'm trying to get to root and get some sprouts out of. Now, mentioning the moringa and also talking about humidity, what you see here is a standard 10-gallon aquarium with a 4-foot shop light right over top of it. I use this setup to, whenever I'm starting to grow something, usually cuttings, that need higher humidity, I put them under that aquarium, and that helps to keep the humidity up just in that small area. And the shop light gives them enough light to keep growing. As you can see, I am getting some sprouts off of some of the moringas that I've got in there, unlike the ones that I've got outside of the aquarium. So it does help. That's another little trick you might want to keep in mind if you ever decide to grow things indoors and need to try to regulate humidity a little bit better. But it does seem to work. And well, I think that gives you a good general overview of the technology I'm using in here. Originally, I was just using the shop lights, which you could pick up at Walmart for under 10 bucks a piece, I believe, back in the day. And now they've got nice looking LED shop lights for similar prices. So you can actually set up a grow room for a pretty low amount of money. You'll still need some for the lighting. If you have to deal with heat, then you're going to have to put in an air conditioner. If you're up north and have to deal with cold, you may even have to put in a heater. Although these lights do put out a bit of heat still. So keep it in mind. And when you're locked in because of the frigid north weather conditions, you can still grow you a salad every day if you want to. And now, I can't resist anymore. I need to start planting some seeds, even though I'm not sure where I'm going to put them. So let me get to that, and I'll see you on the next one.